Hi guys, this is my third time recording this because I keep going over time, but I'll try and be really brief. But I chose to read an 8-page article titled Childhood Abuse and Risk of Eating Disorders in Women. It's published in May of 2004 and it had three different authors, Beth B. Rayworth, Lauren A. Wise, and Bernard L. Harlow. So they started out by just giving a brief background of eating disorders and violence against women. And they discussed how eating disorders may be a way of coping. And then they briefly described other similar research and how it mostly focused on sexual abuse. And these authors wanted a wider range. So their actual question was the overall association between a broad range of childhood abuse and eating disorders in a population based sample of women. Um, so, a cool fact they had is between 20 and 30% of people with eating disorders have current major depressive disorder, and 50 to 60 have a history of major depression. And the 10 to 15% mortality rate associated with anorexia is the highest of any psychiatric disorder. Now, this was in 2004, so obviously that's probably changed. Um, but they broke it down by like the subjects, who they were. They were women 36 to 44 years old, and they were diagnosed with a DSM-4 instead of the 5-TR. And there were some differences, but they confirmed the diagnoses with clinical in-person interviews, and they gathered these women from the Harvard study of moods and cycles. I'm so sorry, my dog is making noise. The eating disorder measures was the next section, and it gave a definition of anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating. And there were some differences between the two DSMs in the article. For DSM-4, it said they had to be showing symptoms for 2 days a week for 6 months. In the DSM-5-TR, which is current, it was one time a week for 3 months. For binge eating, the article described it was 2 days a week for 6 months, and then the DSM-5-TR that we're using is one time a week for 3 months. And then they made sure to verify that these were like actual diagnoses and assessed for these in the in-person interviews. Um, the childhood violence victimization measures were next. So they sent out surveys via mail, and it was self administered, but it was designed to assess violence, victimization, and lifetime socioeconomic position. And it was jointly developed by different researchers from Brown, Harvard, and the Brigham Hospital for Women. And it was adapted from another couple of things as well, and it was broken down into three life stages, and then they described the severity and the wording of the types of abuse. And so it then moved into data analysis. So this is where I kind of got confused, but the average onset of the eating disorder in their sample was between 19 and 25. And so they narrowed it down from a pretty large number of people to 114 women whose um, abuse started before 12 years old, but the eating disorder started after the abuse. Um, but the results showed um, there were no notable differences between women with and without eating disorders with respect to age, ethnicity, and smoking. But women with a history of eating disorder symptoms were twice as likely to have reported any childhood sexual abuse, and then 3 times as likely to have a history of childhood sexual abuse. Sexual abuse without physical abuse was not associated with eating disorders, whereas physical abuse without sexual abuse was still associated with a twofold increase of eating disorders. And then the joint physical and sexual abuse was a threefold increase risk for eating disorder symptoms and a fourfold increase of eating disorder symptoms that met the DSM-4. So they observed increased odds of eating disorders with any physical abuse and physical abuse only, and coexistent physical and sexual abuse, but not only sexual abuse. The strongest association was in women reporting both types of abuse. They had a little discussion section, and it was not clear whether the categories of abuse reported by these investigators were mutually exclusive. So they did admit that they didn't verify the abuse, but they felt it wouldn't be as skewed because there was no biases included because these people answered the things on their own. Um, But um, my open-ended question um, would be, do you feel they truly answered their question? Um, I think I just got a little confused because it is a lot of information, and I'm still trying to get used to reading articles like this and understanding if they answered it. But their conclusion was women who reported physical abuse alone or physical and sexual abuse during childhood were more likely than non abused women to suffer from eating disorder symptoms or to meet criteria for an eating disorder. It just all felt very broad. Let me know what you think and have a great week.